Sarah never believed in love at first sight. To her, it sounded silly, something that only happened in movies with actors who had perfect smiles. But life had a funny way of proving her wrong. She met Ryan on a Thursday, the most unromantic day of the week. It was at a mutual friend's birthday party, and Sarah had been debating whether to leave early when a guy in a navy blue button-up spilled beer all over her shoes. "Oh crap," he said, eyes wide with horror. Sarah looked down at her now sticky ballet flats, then back up at the man who had ruined them. "You better have a really great apology prepared." Ryan grinned sheepishly. "How about I buy you a drink?" She rolled her eyes, but accepted. He was charming, a little awkward, but in a way that made him endearing rather than annoying. They talked for hours, their conversation flowing effortlessly. By the time the party ended, Sarah had to admit maybe love at first sight wasn't entirely ridiculous. Their early days together were like something out of a montage sequence. Coffee dates that stretched into late-night conversations, weekend getaways to random small towns, surprise dinners where Ryan attempted and failed to cook something edible. Ryan was a consultant, always working on some big corporate project that he couldn't fully explain. Sarah, a marketing manager, had a much more stable schedule, which meant she often played the role of the patient girlfriend waiting for him to be free. For the most part, they balanced each other out. Ryan's spontaneity pulled Sarah out of her comfort zone, while her practicality kept him grounded. But as the years went on, little cracks started to form. Hindsight was a funny thing. Looking back, Sarah realized there were signs, like the time he forgot her birthday and then blamed work. "I swear, Sarah, this client has been killing me," he had said, barely looking up from his laptop. Then there was the way he never talked about the future. Not in a meaningful way, at least. Whenever Sarah brought up things like marriage or kids, Ryan would respond with vague, non-committal answers. "Yeah, we'll figure it out eventually," he'd say with a shrug. But Sarah ignored it. Because when you love someone, you tell yourself stories. You convince yourself that things are fine, that people change, that everything will work out in the end. By the time they hit 5 years together, Sarah had stopped wondering if Ryan would propose and had started wondering when. They were both in their 30s, financially stable, and living together. Marriage seemed like the logical next step. So when she found the ring receipt in his jacket pocket while doing laundry, she nearly screamed with excitement. Ryan was finally ready. Little did she know he was. Sarah had always been a little skeptical about snooping. She believed in trust, in privacy, in not poking around where she didn't belong. But in her defense, she wasn't intentionally looking for anything that day. It was a regular Sunday afternoon. She was folding laundry because, let's be honest, Ryan would rather live out of a laundry basket than put his clothes away. When she reached into his jacket pocket, expecting expecting to find the usual: crumpled receipts, loose change, or maybe the rogue business card he'd forgotten about. Instead, she pulled out a small, crisp receipt from a jewelry store. Her heart stopped. She scanned the paper. "One engagement ring," it read, along with a number so high it made her blink. Sarah gasped, pressing the receipt to her chest as if it were the ring itself. This is happening. This is really happening. She felt lightheaded with excitement. She could already picture it: the proposal, the wedding, the life they would build together. She had always imagined Ryan proposing somewhere sentimental, maybe at the little Italian restaurant where they had their first official date. Or maybe something extravagant, like a weekend trip where he'd drop to one knee at sunset, holding out a ring and telling her she was the love of his life. Oh, the possibilities. From that moment on, Sarah was obsessed. She started dropping subtle hints, trying to gauge when it might happen. One night, she casually asked, "So, have you ever thought about what kind of wedding you'd want?" Ryan, glued to the TV, barely looked up. I don't know, something easy. Not a huge thing." Sarah forced a smile. "Okay, fine. I'll plan it for you, lazy man." She spent the next few days lost in wedding Pinterest boards, mentally designing everything from the flowers to the cake. She even found herself practicing her surprised but not too surprised reaction for when Ryan finally popped the question. She told herself to act normal, but how could she? The man she loved was about to propose. At least, that's what she thought. The week before the supposed proposal, Ryan started acting weird. Not excited weird, but distracted weird. Sarah figured he was just nervous. Maybe he was overthinking the whole thing. She even felt kind of bad for him. Poor guy, probably rehearsing his speech in his head, worried about making the moment perfect. She decided to give him space. But the night before it was supposed to happen, she stumbled upon the truth. And it shattered everything. It was a warm Friday evening. Sarah had made dinner, and Ryan had retreated to the backyard for a phone call. She assumed it was work. He was always dealing with last-minute client calls. Wanting to be sweet, she grabbed a cold beer from the fridge and walked outside. She was halfway across the yard when she heard it. Her name. She stopped just before the porch steps, hidden in the shadows. Ryan sighed heavily. "Mom, I know she's not the one." Sarah froze. Her grip on the beer bottle tightened. "I mean, she's great," Ryan continued, his voice tired. "She cooks, she cleans, she has a good job. But marriage doesn't have to be about love, right?" Sarah felt like the ground had been ripped out from under her. Her breath came in short, sharp bursts. He wasn't proposing because he loved her. He was proposing because he was settling. Her hands trembled so badly that the beer bottle slipped from her fingers. It shattered against the patio, the sound loud enough to cut through the night. Ryan spun around. His face went pale when he saw her standing there. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, Sarah could have screamed. She could have demanded answers. She could have broken down right there in front of him. But she didn't. She turned around, walked inside, and started packing her bags. Ryan ran after her, sputtering excuses, but she didn't hear them, because in that moment, all she could think was, "Thank God I found out now." Sarah had always thought of herself as a rational person, someone who could handle emotions with measured responses. But standing in the middle of their shared bedroom, throwing clothes into a suitcase with shaking hands, she felt anything but rational. Her mind was racing. 1 minute, she was reliving the conversation, Ryan's voice, cold and detached, listing her qualities like she was an appliance he was debating purchasing. The next, she was wondering how she had been so blind. How long had he felt this way? Had he ever truly loved her? Or had she just been convenient? She grabbed another handful of clothes, stuffing them into the suitcase with no care for what she was actually packing. "Sarah, wait." Ryan appeared in the doorway, hands up as if she were a wild animal he was trying not to startle. "Don't," she said sharply, her voice unrecognizable even to herself. He looked at the suitcase, then back at her. His mouth opened and closed before he finally managed, "I didn't mean it like that." Sarah let out a humorless laugh. "Oh, how did you mean it, Ryan?" "Because from where I was standing, it sounded a lot like you were settling for me." He ran a hand through his hair, looking frustrated. "I was just nervous. I was venting to my mom. You know how she is. She kept pushing about marriage, and I just panicked, okay?" Sarah zipped up the suitcase. "So you accidentally told her I wasn't the one." Ryan hesitated. It came out wrong. "Right," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Just like that time you accidentally forgot my birthday. Or how you accidentally never made real plans for our future." His jaw tightened. "Come on, Sarah. You're really going to throw away 5 years over one mistake?" Sarah stilled. 5 years. That number used to feel like an accomplishment. Now, it felt like evidence in a case where she had been the fool all along. She took a deep breath and met his gaze. "No, Ryan, you threw it away." And with that, she grabbed her suitcase, walked out the door, and didn't look back. The drive to her sister's house was a blur. She had no memory of grabbing her keys, getting into the car, or even starting the engine. She wasn't sure how she felt: angry, sad, betrayed. It didn't even feel real. 1 moment, she had been planning a wedding in her head, dreaming of white dresses and candlelit vows. The next, she was speeding down the highway, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. When she finally pulled into her sister's driveway, she barely managed to put the car in park before the tears came. Her sister, Emily, must have heard the engine, because she opened the door before Sarah could even knock. One look at her face, and Emily sighed. What did Ryan do? Sarah let out a choked laugh. "Can I come in first?" Emily pulled her into a hug, Of course. An hour later, Sarah was curled up on Emily's couch, a blanket wrapped around her, and a glass of wine in hand. She had retold the entire story, voice breaking only once when she repeated Ryan's words. Emily shook her head in disgust. That absolute trash can of a man. Are you serious? Sarah sniffled. A trash can. Yes, Emily said, taking a dramatic sip of her wine. Because calling him human garbage feels too generous. Sarah let out a watery laugh. Wow, that's fair. You're better off without him. You know that, right? Emily said, placing a comforting hand on her knee. Sarah nodded, even if she didn't feel it yet. She knew leaving had been the right decision, but that didn't make it any less painful. Ryan called a lot. The first night, Sarah let the calls go straight to voicemail. She wasn't ready to hear whatever excuse he had come up with. By the third day, he started texting. Sarah, please talk to me. I swear I didn't mean it like that. Can we just meet, please? She ignored them all. Then, on the fifth day, he sent a voice message. She shouldn't have listened to it, but curiosity got the best of her. His voice was rough, tired. Sarah, I miss you. I messed up. I was nervous. It wasn't about you, it was about me. I got scared, okay? Just, please don't throw this away. Call me back. Sarah stared at the phone for a long time before deleting the message. She wasn't the one who threw it away. She was just the one who finally saw the truth. Heartbreak was a strange thing. For the first few weeks, Sarah felt like she was floating through life in a daze. She went through the motions, woke up, showered, scrolled through her phone without really seeing anything, ignored Ryan's messages, then went back to sleep. Emily tried everything to cheer her up. Spa days, movie nights, even an impromptu road trip to cleanse her energy. But the truth was, Sarah needed time. She wasn't just mourning the end of a relationship. She was mourning the future she thought she had. It wasn't until a month later, while eating cereal straight from the box in her sister's kitchen, that she had a realization. I don't miss him. I miss the idea of him. Ryan had never been the perfect boyfriend. She had twisted herself into knots trying to make their relationship work, trying to be good enough for a man who didn't even see her as a choice, just an option. And now she was free. With this newfound clarity, Sarah decided it was time to move on, not just emotionally, but physically. She started job hunting, polishing her resume, and putting herself back out there. At first, the process was discouraging. Interview after interview led to nothing. But then, one afternoon, she got an email that made her heart race. A marketing firm in Seattle, a dream job with better pay, better benefits, and a fresh start. She almost didn't apply. It was across the country. A new city, a new life. Could she really do that? Emily didn't even let her hesitate. Sarah, you're brilliant, you're capable. And most importantly, you have no reason to stay here. What are you waiting for? So she applied. A week later, she got the job. Moving was both terrifying and exhilarating. The night before her flight, she stood in her old bedroom at Emily's house, staring at the packed suitcases. This was it, a new beginning. A fresh start where Ryan didn't exist, where she was Sarah, the girlfriend of a man who settled for her. She was just Sarah. She took a deep breath. Seattle was calling, and she was ready. Seattle was everything she hadn't known she needed, bustling, exciting, full of opportunities. Her job was challenging in the best way, and for the first time in years, she felt like she was growing. Then she met him. It happened on a Tuesday. She was at a coffee shop, waiting for her order, when a guy next to her muttered, "If I don't get coffee in the next 5 minutes, I might die." Sarah smirked, dramatic much. He turned to her with an easy grin. "I'm serious. It'll be on the news. Man dies of caffeine deficiency while waiting for a latte. Tragic." Sarah laughed, and for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel forced. His name was Jason. And unlike Ryan, he didn't make her feel like she had to prove her worth. He made her feel like she was the prize. The day Sarah left for Seattle, she didn't expect a dramatic airport scene. This wasn't a movie. Ryan wasn't supposed to show up at the last second, confess his love, and change her mind. And yet there he was. She had just checked her luggage when she heard someone calling her name. "Sarah." She turned slowly, almost hoping she was imagining it. Nope. Ryan was running toward her, out of breath, hair disheveled, and oh God, holding a ring box in his hand. Her stomach twisted, not with longing, but with second-hand embarrassment. "Ryan," she said, crossing her arms, "what are you doing here?" He held up the box, flipping it open dramatically. "Marry me." Sarah blinked, then blinked again. "I'm sorry, what?" "I messed up," he said, stepping closer. "I was scared. I said things I didn't mean. But I love you, Sarah." She exhaled slowly, shaking her head. "Ryan, stop." He frowned. "What do you mean, stop? I'm proposing." "Yeah," she said, tilting her head. "But why?" Ryan hesitated, like he hadn't actually thought about it. "Because we've been together for 5 years. Because I don't want to lose you. Because he sighed. Because I don't know who I am without you." And that was the problem. Ryan didn't love her. He loved the idea of her. The convenience, the comfort, the certainty of having someone around. And that wasn't love. Sarah reached into her bag, pulling out an envelope she had been carrying for weeks. She handed it to him. "I wrote this the night I overheard you." Ryan hesitated before opening it. His eyes scanned the words, his face falling with each sentence. "Thank you for breaking my heart before I said yes." He looked up, but Sarah was already walking away. As Sarah boarded the plane, she felt something she hadn't expected. Relief. She had spent so much time grieving their relationship, worrying about what she had lost. But now, as the plane took off, she realized the truth. She hadn't lost anything. She had gained herself. Seattle felt like a second chance. Sarah flourished in her new job, made amazing friends, and most importantly, finally felt like she was living for herself. She no longer measured her worth by someone else's opinion. She no longer settled for being convenient. She was enough. Jason, her new boyfriend, was different. He didn't just tolerate her quirks, he loved them. He laughed at her bad jokes, cheered her on at work, and made her feel like she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. One night, they were out with friends when someone jokingly asked how they met. Jason threw an arm around Sarah and grinned. I won the lottery the day I met her. And for the first time in a long time, Sarah believed it. Because this time, love wasn't about settling. It was about choosing fully, completely, and without hesitation. And she had finally found someone who chose her.